CEO and founder Mary Hartman was a horse owner who was frustrated because her horse was constantly getting sick and none of the common solutions were working. Mary's mission became finding a solution that used food and not medications. This quest is how StableFeed was born. Mary says there's no species of animal to which we owe more than our equine friends. I have a profound love and respect for these animals and believe that every aspect of their care should reflect the gratitude these animals so richly deserve. She created StableFeed, which is an innovative horse feed and supplement company that uses science to harness the power of nutraceutical foods to promote and maintain systemic health in today's equine athletes. If you own a horse or love a horse, this will be a great podcast. Saddle up. This is the Cowboy Up Podcast. Welcome to the Cowboy Up Podcast. This is where talk is all about the West, the spirit of the West, and the people and personalities that make up the West. This is brought to you by White Stallion Ranch and Cowboy Spirit Radio Productions. Okay, Russell, glorious, glorious day outside. I know you've been running around here crazy. I don't know if you happen to see the Goodyear blimp overhead.
No.
Yeah, it was overhead today.
Over us? Or
yeah, over here.
No kidding.
Yeah.
I guess my attention was lower.
Well, evidently, I just figured that they were here filming, for our upcoming 60th anniversary. That's what they were doing, I'm sure.
That's it. Flyover of White Stallion. That's what it was. Yeah, no, I've been. It's May. I love May, but I don't love when Roundup and Tombstone's going on because Laura's gone, and I can't do her job very well, but I have to try. So we've been busy. And she gets home today, I think. So today, Stephen, you always set up our guests.
Well, I'm pleased with this one because, as you know, Russell, I worked with horse performance feed in Elk Grove, California, with a company called Elk Grove Milling years ago. And I'm still friends with those folks, and they do a very, very good product. And Mary Hartman from StableFeed is somebody who's been strongly on my radar. I read stories about what they've got going on, and I thought, it's time to have them on our podcast to hear what they're doing. I mean, they're not really from the West, but they influence a lot of what goes on in the West because of their feed. So I thought we'd have her on and hear what she has to say.
Right. Perfect.
So, Mary, we're happy you're here.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. This is exciting. I love talking about what we do.
Well, and you did the other day, and that's, as soon as you started talking about what you do, and I thought, you know what, we got the right person coming on our podcast, and that always makes me feel good because I know there's going to be a lot of content for people to hear. I mean, I loved your story, especially how you got initially, you were more descriptive, but how you got angry when you started talking about some of the feed you were giving your horses, and it was kind of a fire starter for you, if you will.
Absolutely, and I think it is for a lot of horse owners, actually. So the company started very organically about 8 years ago. In fact, 8 years ago, it wasn't even a company. I just got fed up with horses getting sick. Supplements that didn't work, advice that seemed to be the equivalent of throwing a lot of Jell-O at a wall to see if anything would stick, the Jell-O being mostly dollars out of my pocket. And it just seemed to me that, after 15 years of watching horses get increasingly more chronically ill, that maybe I needed to take a step back away from taking all of that advice and try to figure out what might work for me and work for my horse, just from a scientific and a common sense kind of perspective, And so I did a deep dive into all things equine health. I read through the NIH databases. I read veterinary medical journals, and I sought out any other credible source I could find in order to address what turned out to be or what were gastric problems in my horse, which is really common and gastrointestinal problems in the horse can cause lameness and all sorts of things. So it's really a critical part of horse care. And through all of that research, I came up with two things. One, I came up with a chia-based supplement that did a bang-up job of helping my horse. And in the equine world, when somebody finds something that actually works, word spreads pretty quickly because we're not used to things that actually work. We spend a lot of money on stuff that we hope works. And when you find that one thing that does, it's really kind of an exciting and amazing thing. And the other I understood really clearly was why I continually read veterinarians and researchers and nutritionists and other people say that the reason our horses are becoming more and more sick is because of what we're feeding them. So I had a really great supplement, but I still wanted to understand what it was about what we were feeding them that was so wrong and so bad, and did a deep dive into that whole part of it and realized that it's the fact that we're feeding them industrial waste products in order to save big companies money from so they don't have to pay disposal fees for that stuff. Now, over time, because of agricultural chemicals.
What is that, for instance?
What is waste?
Yeah, the industrial waste products you're talking about that we feed horses.
So when we take agricultural products in to create human food, we have different grades of those products. You have your top grades of wheat and oats and barley and all of those, and the top grades go into human foods, and those are in the things where we can actually see it, like flour for bread and other foods. And so that gets used, and there are remnants and waste and things that are filtered out from that. That might get turned into another level of human food, like crackers or something, where we don't see everything that goes into it. Then that gets cleaned, and the siftings from that get turned into food for animals we do eat, cows, pigs, chickens, that sort of thing. The waste from that, at that point, becomes or used to be labeled as hazardous waste. In the 1960s and 70s, early 70s, that was called hazardous waste. And when Richard Nixon came up with the EPA and said all of this hazardous waste had to be properly disposed of, there were fees associated with taking care of that. So the science we can trust, part of that whole slogan was researchers going into the lab to see how they could clean the hazardous waste so they could then put it into the supply, the feed for livestock, or for animals that we don't eat, not livestock, but animals we don't eat, which would be horses and dogs. So they took hazardous waste, renamed it and relabeled it. So they renamed it a byproduct. They relabeled it as the byproducts, and they put it back into the feed supply or food supply for animals we don't eat.
And did I miss how they got away with how this worked out? Did they get regulatory
created
support,
an act.
Or they?
Yes, they created the 1972 Hazardous Waste Recycling and Relabeling Act.
I got it. Okay.
So they recycle it and they relabel it. It is meant for animals that don't hit the food supply, so we're not ingesting the byproducts, which last week they called hazardous waste. And so that was a large part of where we came up with this sort of explosion in horse feeds. It was a cost-saving measure for industry. It really didn't have a whole lot to do with making horses healthy or keeping horses healthy.
But and I'm guessing from what you said now, there were two advantages from their perspective, because now they don't have described hazardous waste to dispose of carefully, and they're now getting revenue from relabeled now hazardous waste, which is now going into horse and dog food. Is that so?
Right.
They killed two birds with one stone on that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And to be fair, right, in the 1970s, I was a 10-year-old kid living on a farm, and we weren't really spraying all the agricultural chemicals on the food that we're doing now. As an example, in 1989, I believe it was 89, we sprayed 11 million tons of Roundup on our crops in the United States, and last year we sprayed over 1 billion pounds of Roundup onto our crops in the United States alone. So, the introduction of all these agricultural chemicals, which are endocrine disruptors, neurotoxins, and obesogens, so they cause neurological problems, hormone problems, and obesity, these residues are now in some of these foods, and it's showing up as metabolic problems and other chronic health issues in horses. So in the 70s, we didn't have it. It was hazardous waste, but they could clean off the pathogens, but we don't have a way to clean those residues. And it's my opinion that that's a big problem, that is, and the science points to the fact that this is a problem. It's a problem for them. It's a problem for us.
So are these two statements correct? There are GMOs that are Roundup resistant, so they can use that to manage the weeds, for lack of a better term, and B, that they use Roundup to harvest grains, and then the Roundup ends up in the grain.
Yes. When they apply these chemicals at the end stages of the growth period in order to get everything to dry down equally to facilitate harvesting, it doesn't, some of it dissipates, but quite a bit of it doesn't. And so when we start to feed the hulls, the shells, the waste, the scraps, all of those things that come off, the larger amounts of the residues are going to be in those outer parts of the plant. And if you look on the bags of horse feeds and see what they're made of, you'll see Midlands hulls, lots of hulls. So and there was a big research study. There was a research study done by the Morris Animal Foundation at the University of Minnesota. And they tied environmental toxins, these toxins in the environment, to the rapid rise of chronic health issues, especially metabolic disease in horses. So it's really important, I think, or I felt, really important to come up with a solution, come up with a horse feed that was not necessarily made of waste, or not made of waste at all, actually, that provided real food to the horse, because it's always more nutrient dense and better for any sort of species of animal to eat foods that are appropriate for them. And through StableFeed came up with what I call the biome blend of a sainfoin feed. Sainfoin's an ancient forage pellet, or an ancient forage, so we turned it into the base for a feed line, and incorporate functional foods and real foods and clean foods into horse feed to try to reverse some of these problems and to give horse owners like me an option for something that would be better for our animals.
Russell, I think a lot of what she's talking about, remember when we had the gentleman on from BKW Farms and he was talking about the heritage wheat he grows and how different it is from the rest of the wheat?
Right. Well, and there's also other issues that are positive for some people in the gluten situation, less gluten, and a more original level of gluten in wheat, and also the desert adaptation. So it's a win-win-win on that one. But so, horse owners who are listening to us, when we talk about the hulls and the other term you used that slipped my mind, but what types of feeds are we talking about that this stuff's showing up in? What is it pellets? Is it senior? What is it?
It is well. I would say that for me personally, it's my opinion that any of the ultra processed horse feeds are, if we can get away from those, that it is going to be in the best interest of the horse to avoid those. There are horses need fiber, so from a fiber standpoint, hulls are not bad, but only if you can get a clean hull, right? From a nutritional standpoint, what they do is they take all of the waste. They clean it several times. They clean it. They turn it into a slurry. They run it through a pelletizer, and then they will spray synthetic macronutrients onto this. So you have a very poor nutrient quality base with synthetic vitamins and minerals applied to it. And this is now peddled as healthy for your horse. It's peddled as a complete diet for your horse. And I think of it a little bit like eating Fruit Loops or Corn Flakes or any of the other foods that we have where, yeah, they're vitamin fortified, right? You get all your vitamin K if you eat Special K or one of these. But if you eat that every day for your entire life, you are going to be macro and micronutrient deficient. You
Right.
just are.
And you're going to get chronic disease, and as you were talking about. So without hitting brands, we're talking about pelletized feeds.
Right.
A lot
Well,
of them, not all of them probably, but
right,
some
right.
of these pelletized feeds are what you're describing. I just want to, so
Yes.
people can frame what you're talking about in their everyday life.
Right.
What are they feeding their horses? Is it alfalfa or Timothy or whatever grass feed that they have in a bale, or is it this, or is it a bit of each? But if they're doing some of this complete self or described as complete diet type stuff
Right.
comes in a bag,
Complete feed.
these complete feeds, these are what you're talking about. Is that
Right. I'm talking about the complete feeds. And in the horse world, it's interesting because a lot of people look at it and they look at the protein number. You know, somebody told me that I need to have 18% protein for my high performance horse. So they look at the protein number and they look at the numbers on the back of the bag and they see the vitamins and minerals, but they don't stop and look at the ingredient. They don't look to see where the protein number came from.
Yeah, no, I mean,
And
that's 100% true. I mean,
right.
I'm probably, that's not my area of responsibility here, but it's, you know, that's probably what we all do here, you know, so you're right. That's what
right.
you look at those numbers. You don't look at the ingredients. You go, okay, well, it's...
Right, but where the protein comes from determines whether or not it's a good quality protein, a great quality protein, or a poor quality protein. And you always want to have at least a good quality protein going into your horse. Always want to have that. Those are the amino acids, it's the building blocks. You can add in a lot of synthetics and fats and other ingredients to keep the weight on the horse, but it doesn't necessarily mean that your horse is healthy. They might look healthy, but you can have a healthy looking person who's actually a very unhealthy human. And it's the same with horses. And so the ingredients become, for me at least, very, very important when I'm taking a look at the back of a bag of anything from my horses to say, okay, so I see all of these numbers, but what is it made of? Where is it coming from? And are there a lot of 16-syllable chemical sounding things on the back that I can't pronounce?
We can establish that's a bad sign, right?
Yeah, that's just if you can't pronounce it, you shouldn't be eating it.
16 syllables, sir. It's a clue.
Right. And so, you know, when I first went into a feed lab, a lab with this bag of dandelions and hawthorn berries and chia seeds and sainfoin shreds and things that I wanted to use for a feed, the feed scientist said, well, you can't make a feed for horses out of food. And I kind of laughed and said, why not? And he said, well, that's not how it's done. Well, just because that's not how it's done doesn't mean that how it's done is the right way. Can we at least give it a try?
Right.
And I wanted to use food to balance the macronutrients in the horse, the vitamin E, the vitamin A, all the B vitamins, all of those things they can't make for themselves. And I wanted to have all 22 amino acids represented in there for the horse, all of the building blocks and the proteins. And I had a rough idea based on research on the foods I wanted to use. And it was just a matter of figuring out how to put them together in a way so that we didn't have any one ingredient be so high that maybe it threw a number like iron off. It took 2.5 years to formulate what we came up with, which I call the biome blend, because it feeds not just the body of the horse, but the microbiome of the horse, which is the regulator for everything, all the bacteria in the gut. But we use things like sainfoin hay, chia seeds, wheatgrass, which has all 103 nutritional elements known to mankind in it. Dandelion.
Wheatgrass does.
Wheatgrass does.
So we got
Absolutely.
on that, 103, all in wheatgrass.
Yes.
We've
All in
got it.
wheatgrass.
We're going long here because so
It's
interesting. We're going
interesting.
to have a break, so we'll be right back.
Who else wants to escape the high technology and social media world and just get away from everything? Yes, you can escape the digital world of technology and social media occasionally and make the best of that time on vacation at one of our amazing member dude ranches. You will never regret spending and enjoying the present moment with your family and experiencing ranch life. The digital world can be overwhelming for everyone, and we're here to help you escape from those devices and enjoy outdoor activities for a week. Living in a world where we have access to everything at our fingertips is a fantastic tool. It is just that, only a tool. We can certainly take a break from said tools. Many of our dude ranches stray away from the internet/Wi-Fi, so you can enjoy every moment of family time at the ranch itself. You won't miss a single important moment on your vacation. You can call us today at the Dude Ranchers Association at 307-587-2339 or email us at info@duderanch.org to find the best dude ranch for your next vacation.
And Stan, this is a mark of 5 for part 2, Mary Hartman and StableFeed.
You know, Mary, this has been extremely interesting, but a question that I have is, can you explain what you used the term chia is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, please.
So chia is largely grown in South America. It is Dr. Juliet Getty, one of my favorite nutritionists, calls it nature's tiny miracle. It really is. It is considered a superfood, and for a while that was kind of a popular word for a lot of foods, but it truly is a superfood. Chia contains 19 of the 22 amino acids. It's got a huge profile of different micronutrients that are available from the chia seed. It is high in omega-3s, so it's anti-inflammatory. It's a beautiful thing to add to the diet of a human or for horses. And so I based my supplement line on chia seeds because of the many benefits that can come just from the seed and its wonderful nutritional qualities, but I just build on top of that. So I have built and layered things on top of the chia seeds so I don't disrupt it. We could bring all of that to the horse. So it's just a wonderful food.
And you know, the reason I ask about that is based on our conversation the other day. I did a little bit of reading. When I was in school, this is like a million years ago, I think, there were 10 essential amino acids and 10 non-essential amino acids, and now we've come up to 22 what they consider to be essential amino acids.
Right.
And it's really, the breadth of knowledge has really made an enormous leap forward.
Yeah, I mean it's crazy, and there are 9 that we have to feed, and all 9 are in the chia seed. So for horses, for humans, we have to put these into their diet. We have to provide this for them. So and if you buy a little extra chia and you can make yourself a little farm, you could actually grow one of those old chia pets from when we were kids.
Yeah, that's
too.
the first thing I always think of is the famous little chia pet, one of those crazy things like pet rocks. So
right.
You talked earlier about where you did your base research and among other things vet journals or what. Most vets I've talked to either admit or accidentally admit that nutrition isn't their real center of study when they're in vet school. Where'd you get this base information? It must have come from a lot of places because it couldn't have been in one easy source. You didn't just
push the
Google button.
No, you don't push the Google button, but I'll tell you there is a wealth of information in the NIH databases. You can Google you can not Google, but you can go into there and search almost anything, and it takes you into PubMed, takes you into the NCBI. It takes you into articles written from all over the world. They're all over the world in there. And, the first thing that I would do is go down to the bottom and make sure that I wasn't reading something where there was a conflict of interest that was expressed in that, because you have to kind of watch for that. And then also in the abstract, in the top part of it, is to just see whether or not there was any sound scientific methodology, right, to the research, or even if the questions they were asking were smart questions. What were they trying to figure out about the food? So, and it takes a while, I'll tell you. You do need that Google Drive and that Google search engine to understand some of the terminology that's used. But for me, that was really fun. Every time I came across a small or a large nugget of information that I could utilize to improve a product, it was exciting. And for instance, in that, I'll tell you, we have a spirulina chia product that I formulated that is made with spirulina built onto chia, built with a high grade of Manuka honey. And it is an amazing product that I started using for a horse with a cough. But it clears oral plaques, and it is a feed-through that clears sarcoids, which is a pretty common skin tumor in the quarter horse section.
Yeah, we've got those.
Absolutely. So you just feed this, and it's because of the Manuka honey that the formulation is able to do that. So it was the layering and the creation of these synergies between the products that was really exciting for me. It was like a big aha moment. And then to test it on horses, try it on horses with horse owners that I know. The ingredients were all safety checked, made sure that we weren't going to have an issue with that. And the results have been really amazing.
Okay.
It's incredible what you can do just feeding food to a horse.
I want to leave the technical part, and I want to get to the results, because that was the takeaway from our conversation the other day. That was something that made me feel really good and made me quite excited about doing this. Some of the results that you've had that you were sharing with me that other vets have reported to you and that sort of thing.
Yeah, the results are, and we have pictures of a lot of the horses on our website, which is just StableFeed.com, and you can go through and you can see our products in there. You can see our biome blend of feed, which is sainfoin based. You can read about sainfoin, so you can understand what it is and why I chose that.
What is sainfoin? I've never heard that before.
Yeah, sainfoin is another one of those things where it was, oh my gosh, I can't believe I found this. It's a really ancient forage. It's a legume. It has a higher, or at least as high a nutritional value as alfalfa, but it doesn't produce gas. It has a astringent quality and hemostatic quality. So if a horse has inflammation in the gastrointestinal tract, it can ease that. Horses love this stuff. It's a natural wormer. It's just an incredible forage. We stopped growing it in the U.S. because we couldn't grow 5, 6, 7 crops a year to cash crop it. And so it disappeared for about 100 years, with the exception of small stands in Montana and Wyoming where maybe the ranchers fed it to their cows, because you can feed cows sainfoin all day. They don't bloat like they do on alfalfa. So I contracted with growers, and now we've actually started the first ever sainfoin market in the United States
and
in the history of the
plant. Is that up in Montana also? Or?
I grow it in Montana. The marketplace is national. It's through selling of our products through SmartPack, and then through my website and through small local distributors. But it's never enjoyed that sort of a following before. It's a really incredible plant, and it's beautiful.
Does it need to be in that kind of climate, that Montana, Wyoming, Idaho?
No. Well, the newer generation of seeds, the answer is no. There are some seeds and plants that do appreciate and do like that Montana climate a little bit more than some of the others. But I have had small plots of sainfoin that have grown on the East Coast. I had a plot in North Florida. I've grown it and harvested it in Minnesota. It's just part of what I need to do is grow it where I can have it milled, where I can actually turn it into product. So Montanans are very familiar with it, at least the guys that I work with are. So we've got about 1,300 acres now of sainfoin that we grow, and we're doubling that every year. So it's been fun. Yeah, it's been fun. But if you go onto our website, you can see the changes in the horses that we get by feeding the feed to them. And we've got everything from, the 67-year-old person's horse that they've had for almost 40 years, that they just want to provide optimal health. And we take that horse and it can reverse age 10 years in 4 months because they're eating the sainfoin. We have top performance horses that are anorexic that we put on the feed, just clean up their diet, give them a probiotic for 1 or 2 months. And those horses, which were management nightmares for the one Theo, was over a decade, they're now super easy to maintain. They just get their 3 pounds or 4 pounds of the feed when they're operating at that level a day and their hay, and they're good to go.
They get 3 to 4 pounds of the sainfoin?
They get 3 to 4 pounds of either the biome blend or the feed, and that would be the top amount that we recommend. That is for a horse that would be doing Grand Prix level competition.
Like
Most
a
horses
horse works hard.
Right, like a dude. Well, most horses, yeah, most horses.
Ours do. I mean, they work hard. They go 10 to 20 miles a day.
Absolutely, and those horses, 2 to 3 pounds a day probably would be enough, along with their hay.
Because we feed them alfalfa for the most part, and it's the best of an imperfect set of options for what we do, and we're always looking for different options because I'm sure you know better than me. I mean, alfalfa comes with its downside or two, and interlists and some other stuff, and it's pretty good for a working horse, but then you have to look at other things. So these are all really interesting for any horse. You're saying the 40-year-old retired guy or the guy jumping 5-foot fences.
Right, and the other is that not every horse needs to have any sort of a feed like this. There are horses that we talk to the owners all the time, and it's, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? If your horse is doing great on forage and you do a simple vitamin mineral pellet and they look great, they feel great, they're not sick, don't change anything. Right. Don't change anything. That is how horses are meant to be. The one thing that we are big on is diversify. If you're able to bring in grass blends to your horse so they get different types of forages, but they're eating mostly forages, that's fantastic. It's really good for them. That's really what they need.
So is this for performance animals only, or?
No, I'm just writing something about we have this for brood mares, yearlings, foals, weanlings. Any horse can eat this. When we start looking at performance horses, that's when we start to do the 4-pound feedings of it, because those horses, when you have a horse that's, basically an Olympic level horse, the only thing is they're not on the Olympic team, but they are working hard. Eventing horses come to mind. Eventing horses, stadium jumping, Grand Prix dressage, some of the big barrel racing horses, the dude horses that go.
They're moving.
Absolutely. These horses that are working hard, they need more of something. They need more calories. They need more energy. They need more nutrients because they're going through that. They're burning through it. So it's something you can give to any horse because it's just food. What we start to look at is the amount. What do you need? I've got a 21-year-old German riding pony who's a dressage horse, and he's just coming back into work. He gets 2 pounds of the feed a day. He does great. He does super great. He's a pony breed, so he's a little air fern, so 2 pounds is perfect for him. But there may be a thoroughbred at the barn who's doing a higher level of dressage work, and maybe their owner is more winter hardy, so they work throughout the winter. I am not winter hardy. I live in Minnesota, and I don't know why. Yeah, and so that horse might need 3 pounds of the feed when they start upping this going into competition season because it's a thoroughbred and they've
Right.
got a higher metabolism.
Yeah.
So a lot just depends on the horse, what they do. So it is something that can be used for any horse, but performance horses do really, really well on it.
Excellent. I mean, you got to remember, Mary, we're in Arizona, so winter this year was February 23rd between about 2:30 in the afternoon and about 5. So,
Yeah,
we were okay. I mean, we were able to rebuild.
right. I have 2 brothers down there, so they love to call me and say, "Hey, we're freezing. It's 50 degrees down here."
There you go.
And I'm minus 30. So yeah, so the feed is really for any horse, and for some horses just the Sainfoin. We offer the Sainfoin forage to
Excellent.
be put into the diet for the horse, to just round out that diet, and maybe because it gets digested differently, put a little bit more top line on, or a little better muscling. It does a great job at that. It really, at the end of the day, for us becomes a matter of giving horse owners real food options that are based on what a horse needs, right? It's not based on cost being the value. It's based on health being the value.
Yeah.
So we want healthy horses. At the end of the day, sometimes you pay more up front, but you pay less in the long run. And that's kind of what StableFeed is all about.
Now, you alluded the other day that your husband is a clinician of some sort.
Yes.
I don't know if is he involved in this game with you?
He comes in and he helps when we need it. He is probably my biggest cheerleader.
Okay.
He does eat the spirulina chia. He does every day. He has a little cup.
Yeah, it sounds like we all should. Yeah.
So he has that every day. He's a big believer in what I'm doing. And of course, he hasn't ever said this, but I think part of the reason is because his pocketbook is a lot happier when the horse is healthy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no kidding. We've had a horse we thought we stole price-wise, and he's been to the hospital twice with serious colics and got treated the 3rd time here. He's no longer a bargain. So Smart Pack, a lot of people know Smart Pack.
Mm-hmm.
And then go to StableFeed.com, just spelled ordinarily, right? StableFeed.com. Right. And if there are certain places, independent distributors carry your stuff, but it's StableFeed, and then get it either through that Smart Pack company that so many of us know, or StableFeed.com. Is that correct?
That's correct. And if anybody has any questions, we don't use, we're too small to have AI and chatbots here. So, but we do love phone calls. We love to educate people and talk to people.
Okay. If they wanted to call you, what number would they call?
Absolutely. If they want to call, they call 507-487-2323.
Okay. Say that again for us, Mary.
507-487-2323.
Excellent.
Got it. And I'm going to just ask you, because we're out of time, but I asked you offline, so it's on topic but totally off topic. RFK Jr. in his position, you like what he's doing?
I love what he's doing. I think it's about time somebody did it. It's, all of the research points to ultra-processed foods and over-medication, over-vaccination, all of this making us the sickest population in the world. And I look at how we have vertically integrated, I look at it as a vertical integration of our food supply into the healthcare system. Mm-hmm. So sense. They grow our food makes us sick. And that feeds us into the healthcare system, where they give us medications that don't fix the problem. They just create a new set of problems by masking the symptoms of the old problem. And, it's all marketed to us as, the next best thing. Won't even get into my thoughts on the COVID vaccine and the way that whole thing unrolled.
Yeah, I won't either. But it would make this more controversial.
Yes, it would.
But StableFeed.com is not controversial. It's introducing all kinds of great nutrition to horses.
We're pretty controversial, Russell.
Are you really?
Oh, it's amazing. It's very controversial. I don't have any problem.
We should have talked about that.
Oh yeah, it's very controversial.
Next
The
time.
whole idea of feeding food to horses is ridiculous, and the very idea that you can actually make a horse feel better or reverse disease processes by simply giving them food and allowing the body time to heal is extremely controversial, and I make veterinarians and nutritionists crazy every day with what I do, and yet it proves itself out. I just had that last week where a veterinarian from North Carolina was stunned because a horse that was in the hospital was having seizures and colic, and the nutritionist there said, stop feeding them this. It was a Purina product, and feed my feed. And the horse stopped colicking and seizing, and the vet wanted to know more about the feed product. We have a local vet who has 74% remission rate in cats from diabetes, feline diabetes, which is astronomical, because he finally came around to realizing that if you get them off of kibble, their body repairs itself, and you can get them in remission from diabetic seizures and the other problems that come with diabetes. So, these obesogens and these neurotoxins and endocrine disruptors that hit the body have a cascade effect. When you damage one organ system, it goes down into another organ system because everything has to compensate. So what we do is very controversial.
I like it.
And yeah, well, my dad, if you were alive, my dad would say, "Oh, he's not surprised that I'm doing this with one of 6 kids." But it's very controversial. The whole idea of feeding whole foods to horses, which is ridiculous, because when you say it's food, we're accustomed now to the science we were taught we can trust, which says feed basically garbage. You shouldn't feed food to a horse. Yeah,
Interesting.
it gets me in quite a bit of trouble, but that's okay.
Well, it'll keep you going forward.
That's it.
Right.
Mary, thank you very much for your time
Yeah,
today.
thank you both very much. Yeah,
Thanks.
This was fun.
Yeah, it was great.
Fun.
Thank
it was
you very
interesting.
much.
Thank you, Mary.
All right.
StableFeed.com, Mary Hartman.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, and Russell, give me a heads up, or give me a call about your horse with the colic, because you probably need to do a microbiome reset on that horse now that he's been in the hospital, and I can help you with that. It's pretty simple.
No. He needs something. Thank you.
Yeah,
We
you're
appreciate
welcome.
it. And
All
we
right.
will talk to you.
Sounds good. All right, have a good night.
Thank you.
You bet. Bye.
Bye.
Russell, I listen to people like Mary that have got such a passion for what it is they're doing, and they're using and adapting food into what it used to be, which is medicine. And we got away from that. And it's nice to see with the changes that we've got going on at many different levels. You've got people like Mary and companies like StableFeed that are out there saying, okay, there's got to be a better way. And it makes all the difference in the world. If you've got a horse that's sick, I know how it is. It's not a happy time. And if you've got a food that can take care of them to any extent, even if it's 20%, it makes all the difference in the world. And I really appreciated her comments, her passion, and her drive.
Well, it was great. I kept thinking, because I'm a big fan of what RFK's doing, and it's, she's just sort of the horse version. We have this epidemic level, just almost absurd when you hear the stats of chronic disease and et cetera, and the rapid rise in allergies and asthma and all this kind of stuff. But at the same time, she's sitting here talking about using what was at one time called hazardous waste, and they wash it up and they feed it to animals that aren't human food, though, you know, horses sometimes are, whether people like it or not. But the truth is, population's growing, and so we do have to figure out efficient ways to feed people, and it's a push-pull. Yeah. Because we do this Roundup stuff not because we want to poison people, but because we want to be efficient and make food available in large quantities in affordable manners and make each acre more productive. And that's a really important, worthy goal. But at the same time, are we poisoning ourselves? And so we have to figure out, we have to be honest, and we have to figure out how to thread that needle. Yeah. Because it's not absolutely black or white on this.
It's not an A-B thing, that's for sure.
Indeed, that's for sure. Thank you very much, Mary, Stephen, and Russell. Again, you learn more here by accident than most places by design. Thoughtful, a bit challenging, and certainly more than informational, something that has some future thought, life, and business implications all the time while you're enjoying a Cowboy Up podcast. And I think that really comes right to some of the points of what we're talking about. You see, the Western way is about not just cowboys and not just horses. It's about a way of life, and a way of life that we believe is traditional, but also very innovative, encourages entrepreneurialism and risk-taking, everything that truly did made America great again. Oftentimes it was the Western way. Thank you so very, very much for listening to the Cowboy Up podcast program. We would be grateful if you would recommend us to others. Please do that. Write a review. If you'd like to ask a question, or make a suggestion or a recommendation, or raise your hand because you've got some good ideas, just let us know. The Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com, the Cowboy Up Podcast at gmail.com. And remember, we come your way from the historic White Stallion Ranch in Tucson, Arizona. And check it out, whitestallion.com, whitestallion.com. The weather is getting warm here in Arizona, but still, for many of you, that would be an ideal time to have a family cowboy experience adventure. You got the writing, but you can cool off in the pool, sit in the spa, and enjoy a wonderful family cowboy experience. So reach out to us at whitestallion.com. That's whitestallion.com. Hey, all the best and blessings to you. Tip your hat, ride tall, be good to one another, and you come back. You hear? And bye for now.